Hello, and welcome to the Gravel Ride Podcast, where we go deep on the sport of gravel cycling through in-depth interviews with product designers, event organizers, and athletes who are pioneering the sport. I'm your host, Craig Dalton, a lifelong cyclist who discovered gravel cycling back in 2016 and made all the mistakes you don't need to make. I approach each episode as a beginner to unlock all the knowledge you need to become a great gravel cyclist. This week on the show, I'm excited to welcome Andy Chasteen, direct from Bentonville, Arkansas, to the show. If you're like me and you follow a lot of the gravel community, whether it be athletes or event or community members on Instagram, somewhere along the line, I suspect you may have found your way to Andy's Instagram account and following his enthusiastic participation in the gravel community, particularly in Northwest Arkansas. Andy's one of the co-founders of the Rule of Three gravel event, and it's one of those events that really hits close to my heart, directly in the sweet spot of things I love about the event. So I was excited to have Andy finally come on board and just talk about the concept from beginning to end and the type of experience that he was trying to create with his co-founders. As I got into the conversation, I learned a lot more about Andy and some of the amazing events that are in his history. And one amazing event in particular that he produced in the climbing world that I was quite familiar with from Red Bull TV, I think it was. So I'm hugely excited and enthusiastic to welcome Andy to the show. But before we jump in, I do need to thank this week's sponsor, Pillar Performance. For those of you who don't know Pillar's a sports micronutrition company who have developed products that intersect between pharmaceutical intervention and sports supplements for athletes. The easiest way to describe it is hydration and carbohydrate products that'll take you through to the finish line. Pillar's mission is to get athletes to the start line in the best condition over and over again. For me, I've been paying an increasing amount of attention to my nighttime routine. Pillar's triple magnesium has become an integral part of my end-of-day ritual, taking it 30 minutes before bed each night to guarantee my body spends as much time in REM and deep sleep as possible. Pillar uses a high dose of glycinate magnesium, activating the parasympathetic nervous system and ensuring you fall asleep and stay in the restorative sleep phases for longer. I check my HRV data religiously each morning, and it speaks volumes as to the effects of Pillar's triple magnesium and what it's doing for my recovery. Higher HRV and more closely linked REM and deep sleep cycles. On top of that, I feel better rested and recovered and ready to attack my workout for the day. If you'd like to try Pillar today, head on over to pillarperformance.shop. For US listeners, head to thefeed.com/pillar and enter the code Craig for 15% off. That's Craig, C-R-A-I-G, for 15% off all first-time purchases. With that business behind us, let's jump right into this conversation with Andy. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I've been listening to you for a long time.
That's amazing to hear, Andy.
Well, sometimes it's just weird to be on a podcast that you've been listening to and you're talking to the person that you listen to all the time. So it can be awkward, but it's great. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like I've been observing your antics from afar for a while, so I feel like I know you a little bit, but it's the first time I think that we've actually got a chance to chat.
Yeah. I'm super stoked to talk to you. So
Sweet. Well, a lot of people will have heard of Rule of Three, and I definitely want to get into that event.
sure.
Super excited to talk to you about that and gravel cycling in Northwest Arkansas as well, just as a general topic, because I know, as we were talking about offline, that community that you're part of cultivating and a member of is just so vibrant that, I just love to hear stories from the ground and how other communities can mimic what you're doing and the passion that the community seems to have for gravel riding.
Yeah, it's as as we were talking a few minutes ago, there's a lot going on here, and it's quite exciting. And as we like to say around here, we're just on first base, which is kind of exciting to even say.
Yeah, and for those of us who have been to Bentonville, to hear you describe it as first base is insane because you've got great infrastructure. You can get around town on bike paths. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a
Sure.
couple substantial mountain bike areas and
Yep.
obviously miles and miles and miles of great gravel as demonstrated in the Big Sugar Gravel event every year.
That's right. And we're working on, like you said, connectivity and I don't mean to jump straight into this, but like a lot of what we are working on in the Bentonville area is connectivity. How can we connect neighborhoods, business centers, and just life in general to trail and gravel road and safe connectors to get out into these rural areas? Like that's a thing that's been on our mind for for a while. But what we've really focused on in the past year is really connecting Bentonville or the Northwest Arkansas area to the ride experience, which has been a fun time for sure.
Yeah, I bet. That safe connector thread I think is so important because a lot of areas are great for cycling, but you have to get there, and many of us want to ride there. And if riding there is dangerous, that's just going to prevent people from enjoying the sport in the way we want them to.
Yeah, the lens with which we've been looking at, let's just stay on the gravel side for now. But like the lens with which we've been looking at the gravel side of the experience in Northwest Arkansas has been heavily towards, okay, this area is growing. This area is growing very, very fast, and there are some things that we cannot control, and we can't control growth. We don't, we want the Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas area to grow and be prosperous, and but we also have to make sure that that experience for the rider is, safe, it's enjoyable, it's approachable for someone who might be brand new. So that's kind of the lens with which we've been looking at the gravel experience. And quite honestly, we're building gravel connectors that are not used by cars. They're just for cyclists to get from, say, let's just say for right now, the center of Bentonville out into these rural areas. So as Bentonville
Yeah.
grows and the footprint expands, those will be protected in perpetuity for their gravel experience, which is really cool. And maybe there's other, communities doing that, but if they are, I'm not aware of it. And it really is this amazing foresight to where 20 years from now, we hope that the gravel experience is protected and enhanced, and it's
Yeah.
still what it currently is. So
Yeah, it's probably worth, I've spoken about Bentonville a couple times on the podcast before, but it's probably worth noting that the sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the major employer in Bentonville is Walmart, and then entities that are related to Walmart. And it's been there for many, many years. And the
sure.
Walmart family has had a commitment to investing in cycling infrastructure so that
Hmm.
when they're thinking about their new campus from the ground up, they're always thinking about how can people ride bikes in. And it seems from an outsider's perspective that that's infused across the entire town. Just this idea that bikes are going to be part of this community. And to your recent point, we're going to build in infrastructure from the onset of planning, not try to slap it on after we've built a subdivision or grown the community in some way.
That's right. There has to be some foresight, and you're right. That's the focus for sure. And it can't be done, like you said, behind the ball. We have to be ahead of the ball on that. For example, the Walmart's building a new ginormous home office campus, and on that campus will be single track, and there's initiatives within the home office, to have a certain percentage of people commuting their, to work on a weekly basis. And so there is a lot of foresight within, cycling, and riding a bike is not only healthy, but it makes, it's better for a community as well. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And as an off road cyclist, I remember going from my Airbnb to an event that the people for bikes conference people were having at that great museum you have there. And I
Yeah. Crystal
remember
Bridges. Yeah.
Crystal
Yeah.
Bridges. Yeah. And I remember
Yeah.
having the opportunity to ride single track just on the way there to get from point
That's
A to
right.
point B. And I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, there's kids, kids ride single track to school every day, which I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous because I wish I would have had that experience. But yeah, we got a lot going on here. I like to use the word bonkers. There's a lot of bonkers things going on here. It's busy, and
Yeah.
it's bustling, and it's great. If you're a
That's
bike
exciting.
rider, it's hard for me to think there's a better place to be. That's for sure. So
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely someplace everybody needs to visit at some point. Like, I feel like, Northwest Arkansas 10 years ago might not have been on people's radar as a cyclist as a
yeah,
place to go. And now I think unequivocally for anybody who's set foot in that town of Bentonville in that area, it's a emphatic yes, go visit.
that's right. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
You were talking about sort of childhood and the ability to ride to school, et cetera.
Yeah,
Let's roll back a second and just kind of learn
sure.
a little bit more about where you grew up, Andy, and how'd you find the bike originally?
Oh man, that's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. I grew up in southern Missouri, kind of right across the border, actually, from northwest Arkansas. It's a really small town. Went off to college. I actually played basketball in college, and into team sports basically. My entire childhood and into probably 21, 22 years old. And then after I graduated college, I got obsessed with rock climbing for some weird reason, and got really into rock climbing, ultra marathoning, and like I said, like a very long story made very short. Maybe not very short, but short. I was running ultra marathons, and in order to train for ultra marathons, I'm like a big guy, I weigh like 200 pounds, and I knew that I couldn't run a lot of miles to train for these ultras.
Yeah,
And so what I would do is I would go out for like, maybe like a 10-mile trail run, and then I would jump on a bicycle. I wasn't a cyclist, but I would jump on a bicycle to take that, pressure off of my joints and like
yeah.
keep injury free. And so I would go out and jump on a bicycle for 4 hours, and I just got hooked, completely hooked. And really the rest is history. Been on a bike ever since. And I still love to do all these. I love outdoor endeavor, yeah, outdoor rec, anything outdoor rec, paddling, climbing, trail. I like all that, but my obsession is certainly with the bike. So that's the short story.
And did you discover yourself as a mountain biker in those early days, or what was your niche of choice?
At the time, I was actually living in Oklahoma City, and which is it's there's not a lot of what I would consider like great bike riding there, but the
Yeah.
community is amazing. It's a very tight knit, not a big community, very tight knit, but it's very road centric.
Okay.
So I started off kind of on the road bike, and I did road racing and crit racing and all that, and I was certainly into mountain biking at the time, but that wasn't what I spent most of my days doing. So I kind of started on the road.
Gotcha. Since we're going to get into the Rule of Three event that you're
Yeah,
putting on there in Bentonville, I think it's going to be interesting to just talk about your journey and experience as an event organizer. And I know
yeah.
from your bio that a big rock climbing event happened sometime in that period. So why don't you walk us through like that event? Because I think it is, for those of you who haven't heard of Horseshoe Hell, go look it up. I think I want to say I saw some stuff on Red Bull TV about it, but I've read about it in Outside Magazine over the years. So
Sure.
it's a really amazing event, but I'd love to just hear how it got started, because I think it's part of your origin story as someone who stuck up their hand and said, I can put on an event.
Yeah, for sure. So like, rewind back when I was in this very obsessive rock climbing phase, and there's this beautiful, beautiful canyon out in Arkansas called Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, and they have 600 sport routes, so single pitch technical sport route rock climbing, and I would spend a lot of time there in kind of the early years of my climbing, and me and some buddies one weekend got this crazy idea. It's kind of an outdoor climbing gym. You got a route here, you can climb this route, you take 10 steps to your right, and you got another one. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
route on route on route on route, and they're all really good routes. And so we got this wild idea to put on an event that was like a 24-hour rock climbing competition, which just seems idiotic. And
Yeah.
of
Had
course,
anybody done that in the past? Obviously, like on the
no, no, no,
yeah, we have like on the
no, no,
mountain
no,
bike
no.
side, there's 24-hour mountain bike racing, but it sounds like it was a totally foreign concept.
Very foreign, of course, very, very foreign. And so, and all my buddies thought it was a great idea, but nobody really wanted to like kind of take the reins. So I took the reins, and I it's a private property, so I went and
Okay.
asked the owner, and he was like, yeah, 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 you can do that. And thus started this beautiful relationship. This was 2006, and this beautiful relationship with this great, amazing place. And we built this really cool experience where it started off as a 24-hour rock climbing competition, but now it's a 5-day festival, right? And so Outside Climbing, I'm sorry, Outside Magazine calls it the Burning Man of rock climbing. So you got people in costumes, and it's a 5-day love fest party, right? Like
Yeah.
I like to say, you can come here and be anybody you want to be for 5 days, as long as you're respectful to your fellow, people there.
Yeah.
So, and the rest is history. It still happens. We're still doing it. And even though I'm not like a huge climber and as into it as I used to be, it's still a raging. We can only allow 500 competitors, so that people can like accomplish their goals that they set out,
Yeah.
for that 24 hours. We can only let 500 people in, but the amount of spectators that come and the people who just want to kind of party for the weekend is way beyond that. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. And oddly enough, I'd never put on an event before that. I had never even been to a rock climbing competition before I put that on. And sometimes I think that is actually the golden ticket. Like it's almost better
Agreed.
to not know how things are done or they're
Yeah.
supposed to be done when you're trying to do something. That way you can be creative and kind of do, something a little different. So anyways, that was kind of the origins of my first event. And I still don't consider myself an event promoter because I've always just done them for fun. I've always had a real
Yeah.
job, but these have always been for fun, and we've cultivated beautiful communities behind them, and that's what I'm proud of in these events.
Yeah. Amazing. I'll make sure to link to Horseshoe Hell because I think it's a fascinating story and the
It's a
pictures
wild
that come
time,
out
man.
every year. Yeah. It looks awesome.
It's a real
Is it,
wild time. It's real
is it
wild.
is it a two-person team for 24 hours or is it solo?
It's a two-person team because you have to have a
Okay.
belayer, obviously. So the whole
Yeah.
idea is like, but there are categories, just like any other event. Like, there's categories for the most amount of routes climbed by a team or an individual, or the most amount of routes climbed that are a certain, difficulty level or whatever the
Right.
case may be. So there's all these, just like kind of like the Tour de France. There's a race. There's lots of races within the race. Well, there's lots of categories within this one event that you can actually go after, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun. When did you find yourself actually moving to Bentonville and what attracted you to that area?
I'm trying to think of how many years ago that was that I moved to Bentonville. I originally became involved in the Bentonville area through I'm self-employed. I'm a consultant in basically really what I've always considered like the bike or outdoor industry. And so I really started coming to Bentonville years ago as a consultant for different brands in the industry. So I'd go to Bentonville and in my Sprinter van and spend half of a month there at a time. I spent half my time there, just kind of living out of the van and working for clients and doing work that way. And eventually, I moved full time. We're full time in Bentonville now, but my wife and I. But it started off as kind of like I was kind of, I hate to use the word squatting in Bentonville, but I was kind of squatting in my Sprinter van in Bentonville for work. Yeah, which is
And
wild.
obviously you started to discover some of the riding throughout the area.
Yeah,
Was there a
yeah.
certain point in time when you sort of got your first gravel bike underneath you?
I had been dabbling in gravel bike, before I started going to Bentonville. I was super into the gravel scene early on, for a lot of different reasons. I grew up in the outdoors, hunting, fishing, things like that, and it just felt like gravel was more in line with like my personality and where I came from. I grew up in a rural area, so even today when I ride my gravel bike in rural areas, it feels like I'm home. And so I was into the gravel scene pretty early, I guess, if you will, but not because I thought it was the next big thing. It's just because it kind of resonated with my personality
Yeah.
or my soul a little bit more. Yeah.
And did that lead you to testing the water or some of those early events?
Yeah. 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 I had a lot of, uh, I wrote an article many years ago. I'm trying to remember when that was, but I wrote this crazy article. I'll have to look it up on the date, but and it was just for like my personal website. It wasn't to like, I wasn't a journalist or anything like that, but I wrote
Yeah.
this article, and this is when, Mid-South was called, the Land Run 100, and the
Yeah.
article was titled,
Yeah.
and it
And,
just gave
and
I gave all these reasons because it was a build. It was for everyone. It was for everyone who wanted to ride a bike, no matter who you were, and
yeah.
the community building, and like, so I just, it resonated with me early, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And imagine, at that time, obviously being familiar with Mid South and all the events that were going on at that time, over the subsequent years, we started to see, I mean, for lack of a better word, a professionalization of some subset of races,
sure,
lots of
sure.
community based races. I mean,
Yeah,
still to this day, I think event organizers have to kind of navigate their lane and understand like what type of
I agree.
event they're putting on. But as we come to the rule of three, I'm just curious of your mindset of, was there something missing? Was it more, hey, Bentonville's awesome and I know my way around and I want to show people a great day out there?
Yeah,
Talk us through the mindset of the origin of that event.
yeah. I think it's probably a combination of maybe all of those. The origin came, I have to say, Allied Cycle Works has been one of my clients for quite a few years, and uh, a guy named Sam Pickman, he's the director of product over there. He designs all the
Yeah.
bikes and everything.
Former podcast guest over here.
Oh, no way. Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sam is a super good buddy of mine. I adore him. And there's actually a connection with that too, because Sam's wife, Lauren, is my co-director for Rule of Three. So, anyways,
Okay.
I want to back up. Uh, the we were, when the Able came out, Allied's first gravel bike, we were on, Sam and I were riding around on prototypes in Bentonville one time, and we were hopping on single track and popping in and out of single track trail and then back onto gravel and things like that. And we got this just one day, boom, all this crazy idea. Why don't we put on an event that is equal amounts pavement, gravel, and single track? And we kind of like threw it around a little bit. We thought it was a really cool idea. And that honestly is the origin of Rule of Three. And really, we sat on that idea for probably 2 or 3 years, or I did, because Sam's busy. He doesn't want to put that, he doesn't want to, that's not Sam's lane, right? Sam is
Yeah.
a brain. He's a brain guy. So that was where the origin of the idea came from, is riding our gravel bikes on the single track in Bentonville. And so we sat on this idea for quite some time. And this would have been early 2021. I remember the specific time when I decided it was go time for Rule of Three. Mid South, Mid South again. I love you, Bobby. Mid South had just canceled their event because of COVID, and
Yeah.
the reasoning behind it is we can't bring people from all over the country here, um, because of COVID. And I thought to myself, well, you know what I could do? I could put on an event in Bentonville where it's just locals, no one has to travel, and we have maybe 150 people show up, and that is our like dipping our toes into the event
Yeah.
scene, right? This is my time. This is my time. And so I like started this free Instagram account and just kind of started marketing the idea behind Rule of Three. Next thing you know, we sold out 700 spots in the first year. I wasn't expecting that, but that's the origins of Rule of Three. And quite honestly, I'd never put an event on. I'd been to a lot of them, obviously, and I didn't do it out of a desire to do something. I didn't think it was necessarily something that was lacking in the scene. I just was like, you know what? I want to put on an event and I want to do it my way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we'll do it different than everyone else. Because I, personally speaking, I find value in all of these different ways that gravel events are put on. I think they're all valuable. I think they're all great, right? Whether
Yeah.
you're putting on this beautiful UCI feel, SBT gravel that's like polished and beautiful, or you've got Unbound that's this really long, ginormous event, right? That's like the worldwide. Or you've got Rule of Three, which we put it on in a freaking field. We're dirty, we're grimy, we're different, right? I find value in all of those, and I think that there's enough of an audience now to where all of these different ways of putting on an event
Yeah.
find value with, they resonate with a certain audience, and that was really the reason behind it.
Yeah, 100%. I remember when I first read about Rule of Three, I was like, this is my jam, because I often say like my favorite events, you're going to hate your bike at least once during the event if
Yeah.
the event organizer did it right. And when you guys kind of came out with
Yeah.
rule of three, I was like, this is awesome. Like it's really putting
Yeah.
a fine point on like, you better pick your poison. And I,
Yeah.
very much enjoyed hearing stories about it and hearing some of the racers talk about it because they were going through these thought processes in their head. Like I remember Ian Boswell talking about it, and he's like, I know I'm not going to rip single track. So if I'm going to be competitive in this race, I need to do something on the road section and on the gravel section that's going to meaningfully displace some of the more skilled mountain
Yeah.
bikers in the bunch.
Yeah. And he did. He did
Yeah.
that year, you know. He put the hammer down and dropped almost everyone on a really long kind of gravel pavement sector, you know. Which, you know, the route's really hard, you know. It's historically speaking, it's been a 100-mile route with about 10,000 feet of climbing and about 20 miles of single track. You know, it's and you don't do all that single track at once. Like you're kind of in and out of stuff all day, right? And that's the whole idea. You got to be on. There is
Yeah.
no zoning out at rule of three. You zone out, that's when you're in trouble, you know. And so the whole idea was to do something that was really, really difficult, but keeps you on and honest all day long, right?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the idea behind it. We throw a huge finish line party. Um, and that's one other thing that we do differently. We're in a field, right? We're in this big, wide open field. And the finish line is basically a two-track road. Last year, we built a cyclocross course for the finish line. And what I do on purpose, or what Lauren and I do, I should give Lauren Lauren does most of the work. She's the brains behind the operation. But what we do is we build the finish line, and this is a very important part for the brand of Rule of Three. Our finish line, you cross that finish line in the finish line chute, and you are in the party. We don't shoo you out of the chute. You as you come into cross the finish line, you're in the party. We don't move you. You're there. You can stay there as long as you want to. We put a bag over your shoulder, and in that bag is a burrito, a beer, a Coke, and a muffin. So you don't have to go somewhere and pull your wallet out to find food.
Yeah.
It's right there. We expect you to stay and have a good time with all your friends and tell stories and whatever, right? But in order to do that, it also has to be safe, right? So what we did is we put the last corner on the course about 10 feet from the finish line. So there are no sprints across the finish. The sprint
Yeah.
is before you get to the finish. And so that keeps it like nobody's getting ran over by a bike going too fast. So there's thought behind that because I want people to feel like when they cross that finish line, they can stay right there. And so all these little things that like doing things differently, I think sets us apart and all sets all these other events, but not just us, but everyone who does all these different things at their events, that sets them apart. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. Since I want the listener to definitely walk away with a real understanding of the rule of three course, you talked about these three elements of single track, kind of gravel roads and road.
Yeah,
As you talk through people who are coming to the event about the type of equipment they would use, I mean, is the single track pretty gnarly, or is it, it's rideable on, a
sure.
40C tire? I'm just curious about that.
We keep it. I like to keep it as not gnarly as possible.
Yeah.
That way, because I don't want to limit our audience to people who are really good mountain bikers. I don't think that's fair. And so we try to keep most of the single track in like like the green blue,
Yeah.
realm,
Yeah.
right? And there'll be some technical sections, but they're not long. If you need to hop off your bike for a second, that's okay. It's not that big a deal, right? We do suggest nothing smaller than a 45
Okay.
on tire width.
Yeah.
And 50 is your go-to, quite honestly, just because really the standard's kind of moving that direction anyways. But you're going to have a much more pleasant day on a 50 than you would say even a 45.
Yeah.
But the course is hard, in Bentonville, we don't have these big long climbs like you do
Yeah.
out where you're at. So we call it death by 1,000 cuts, 10,000 feet of climbing in 100 miles when you don't have a climb longer than, half a mile at the most. that's a lot of steep, punchy climbing,
A hundred
so
percent.
it wears you down over the day, and like death by a thousand cuts is the name of the game.
It's so interesting coming from the Bay Area where, we have to do
Yeah,
an 800-foot climb or a 1200-foot climb. Just we go up and then we go down. There's not a lot of flat rolling
yeah,
stuff. I have a
yeah,
really hard time transitioning to the Bentonville type hills because, as you said, you might push over the first one and the second one, and then they just start to add up, add up, add up. And I just think
yeah,
it hits me a lot differently as a cyclist than the long climbs that I'm used to out here.
yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting difference. Like I don't adjust well to the climbs that you do because of where I
Yeah.
live too, So I'm used to I'm used to 20 seconds at, whatever 500 watts or like something above threshold or something, right? So
Yeah.
I guess it's just kind of you're used to where you're at, right? So but yeah, it's a very unique course, and we've certainly started out at a lot of kind of B road sections, which can be in general even more technical than some of the single track too.
Yeah.
So we change the course every year, every single year. It's
Oh,
different.
fun. I think that
Yeah.
underscores how much terrain you have access to too, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, we change it up drastically every year. It feels completely different every year, which is
Yeah.
cool. And you're like you said, the the our canvas is big, so it's not hard to do that, which is a huge blessing for us for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The other incredibly unique thing about this event is the entry fee. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah. This is just kind of another part of our ethos is our brand. Like and it's not just the entry fee, and it goes back to what I said, a few minutes ago. I don't do this for my job. This is not my day job. I'm doing this. I do this because I want to, because it's fun. Lauren and I both do it because it's important to us to put on. Our goal is not to make money on this. I mean, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but our goal is to put on the best event possible for the people that come up the show. And so our entry fee is $85. And I believe I think our first year it was 65 and now it's 85. And we'll never go over the amount of miles that the event is what is basically,
That's the
I
goal.
think
Yeah.
what I've committed to. And I like to commit that in public because it keeps me accountable. One other thing that we do is we do not take or accept cash from sponsors. We want a sponsor to come to our event and take that cash that they would have given us and use it to add value to the participants, right? The people that are there. I'm a fallible human, and so if you were to give me, I'm just saying personally, me, if you're a sponsor, you're going to give me, let's say, whatever, $10,000 to be a sponsor of Rule of Three. Guess what I'm do? Probably going to pocket 5,000 of that and then put 5,000, other 5,000 into making the event better for
Yeah.
the people. So what I do to hold myself accountable is I just don't take cash at all. I just say, if you want to sponsor the event, then you're going to have to come and add some sort of value to the event. And we don't make rules in this, which is cool. Like someone came last year and cooked bacon out at an aid station the whole day. So there's all these crazy ideas that we encourage the sponsors to come and do, aid stations, parties at the finish line. Somebody's making margaritas in one of their tents or whatever. Specialized comes and they do finish line photos when you're all dirty and gross,
Yeah.
and those are free. You get those for free. We don't charge. There's no charge for those. Um, and we have what I like to call the best swag bag in the biz. Like we give every competitor two, not one water bottle, two, because everybody likes a matching water bottle, right? So
That's right.
we do
Hadn't thought
water.
about that.
Yeah, we do water bottles. You get a tea, you get a bandana, you get an ass saver, you get a stainless steel pint. Last year, Mir gave everybody insulated bottles that were logoed, and like so I like to have $200 or $300 worth of cool stuff that people will actually use
Yeah.
in the bag that they get at Pack and Pick Up. So for us, it's really about creating value and creating a really good time at the event, and that's what we're committed to doing. So that's, I guess, a few of the ways that we like to kind of do things different, right? And I'm I'm lucky. I'm blessed that I don't. I don't put this event on for my living, if
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. Yeah.
Yeah, it changes the dynamic entirely, I think, because
Yeah,
I mean, it's such a difficult business to be in, the event business.
it is. It is. That's
Yeah.
right. I can make every decision I make is not attached to the bottom line. And I know that other events aren't like that, and I applaud them. I think every other event out there, I've been to almost, not all of them, but a lot of them and almost all of them, and I will go to them this year too because I think they're amazing. But we just want to do things different at Rule
Yeah.
of Three.
Yeah. And as you said,
Plain and simple.
there's room for it all.
1,000% room for
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah. I think you mentioned this, but I wanted to make sure the listener has this as a takeaway. The it's a 100-mile event, but I think you have a additional distance this year. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually we also offer a 50-mile event.
Okay.
So that's something that like we like to say, if you don't think that you can finish well, this isn't your typical gravel race. It takes, or gravel event. I hate calling it a race for some reason. It doesn't sit well for me. Um, if this is not a 100-mile gravel event. This will take you a lot longer than it would normally take you to do a gravel event because of that 20 miles of single track.
Yeah.
You don't think that you can finish something like that in, say, 10 to 12 hours. We respectfully say you should dip your toes in the 50 miler, and then once you've got that under your belt, like, hit that next one, right? And so we've got the 50, we've got the 100, and this year we're actually adding a 200,
Oh, really?
which will be
Wow.
it's going to be a sick route, and we're only opening it to 100 people because it's my thoughts are ultra distance. If it's not already here, it's the future. People, I mean, I'm thinking of myself. I've done how many 100-mile events, and while I still love them, sometimes I think to myself, well, what's next, right? So I
Yeah.
think people are thinking, I think a lot of people are thinking, what's next for me? I've done 10 100-mile gravel events.
Yeah.
What's my next step? Well, a 200-mile is probably your next step. And I know that Unbound is a 200 miler, but this isn't Unbound. This is 200 miles with 30 plus miles of single track and you're circumnavigating this ginormous lake out east of Bentonville. There's a lot of climbing, and it's way out in the middle of nowhere. It's an adventure.
Yeah. So
So
what do
we're
you
adding that on
imagine?
this year.
Yeah, given the obviously the duration it takes to ride the single track of the 100 and the added single track in the 200, how long of an event are you thinking that's going to be for? I mean, I don't know how to put it in perspective for people from the first to last, but what's the window of time you're
Right.
thinking?
Well, we'll start the event the day before, so
Okay.
we'll start the 200 miler on Friday afternoon, and it'll start from where Pack and Pickup is, basically, in town. And we're making a 30-hour cutoff, and you'll have to wear a spot tracker on your,
Yeah.
just like you would any other ultra distance event, right? So
Yeah.
it really is it's unsupported, it's fully self-supported. We ain't coming to pick you up.
Yeah.
So So it's
uh,
a different adventure.
yeah.
But I personally believe if it's not already here, it is the future of the gravel experience, at least part of the future.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, just about the different flavors of events that exist, even in a narrow 100-mile mindset. Now you're seeing it go both directions, which is pretty natural. I mean, I think again, like sometimes riding 100 is not enough. Should be for most people, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's not.
Yeah, and I had a question. I had someone ask me the other day, are you ever considered doing like a 20 miler because your event's not that approachable for maybe a newer person? And I was just honest and I said, no, we're not going to. But what we do offer is we offer training rides in Bentonville for no charge. They're free. We just did what we call the Rule of 399 last weekend, which we offered a 22-miler route for people who wanted to see what it's like.
Yeah.
You get to practice on the single track. You get to see that, wow, this is a lot harder than a 22-mile gravel ride, right? It takes a lot longer. It's harder to do. It takes a little bit more technical skill. So we're trying to train up newer people to at least have the opportunity to maybe hit that 50 miler one day. I don't think that we'll ever have a distance that's shorter than that, but we do that outside of our Rule of Three events, like in our Rule of
Yeah.
399. We do training events and things like that to give people that approachable mindset of, well, maybe I can do the 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Super interesting. And that goes back to
Yeah.
what we were talking about, which is that great community of cyclists and cycling events that's growing up and around Bentonville. It sounds like there's plenty of opportunity and exposure for people to all these great events that are going on. And as they sort of start to put a toe in the water, you're not the only person who's told me there's, great group ride events quite regularly out in Bentonville for people to get a understanding of what gravel cycling is all about.
There's a lot of great events that happen in Bentonville. It seems like they're nonstop actually, but and they're amazing. I love to go to all of them. Big Sugar's a big deal, and so, and there's many more. They're not the only one, but there's the opportunities are endless,
Yeah.
in our neck of the woods, if
Amazing.
you will.
When does Rule of Three happen each year?
We're on the same weekend every year, so I like to, you know, it happens on May 18th, but I like to say that I think that's May 18th. Saturday might be I think it's 18th. Um, but I like to say that Rule of Three is like May 16th through the 19th because we got the shakeout rides. We've got, we got breakfast on Sunday morning, after the event. We've got all kinds of things going on all weekend. So I hate to like pin it down. Like I'm like, come early, stay late. Bring your mountain bike too, let's party. So, but yeah, it's on the 18th this year. Yeah. And,
Love it.
and we like, I mean, I'm gonna shout out too. Like I think Gravel Locos is that weekend. I think Pete's Pay
Pay
Dirt
dirt.
is that
Yeah.
weekend. And I've talked to all those guys, and I'm like, everybody's kind of like, are you guys are we okay with all this? And I'm like, we're all in different parts of
Yeah.
the country. The audience is humongous. Who cares?
Yeah.
You're going to fill up. You're going to fill up. We're going to fill up. Let's all be okay with this. There's
Yeah.
no problem with us overlapping dates. I've had zero problems with that.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah.
How much rider capacity do you have for this year?
We limited at 1,600 people, and there's a reason behind that. I think we could probably sell 3,000 spots, but I don't want to. I want someone who crosses that finish line to look over our after party, right? And feel like they know everyone there. They don't have to know everyone there, but I want them to feel like they do. And so I'm not interested in, having it be bigger than that.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been at for, this will be our third year that we've been at 1,600 people. And I like that number. It's nice for us. It helps our logistics, and it just helps people have a better experience too. And so that's probably what we'll stick at.
Yeah. It's funny.
And we'll sell out.
I was having a totally unrelated conversation in my day job just about a business I used to run and this opportunity we had to basically double the business. But I recognized
Yeah,
that doubling the business was going to ruin my life. It was going to be
yeah,
miserable. We'd have to run 2 shifts in a factory. No one would be happy.
yeah,
I couldn't imagine it being the same thing. And so it's
yeah,
great for you. It's great to hear it from your words as well. Just like, this is a great size for us. We are confident that we can deliver an exceptional experience to 1,600 people. And why deliver a subpar experience to 3,000 people?
yeah. And part of that is because this isn't my real job. You
Yeah.
know, you let 4,000 people in, that becomes your real job, and I don't want it to be. I like my real
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. When does registration open?
Registration opens February 5th. So what is that, like a few days from now?
Yeah.
Um,
Might have to.
and that's okay if you're like if this is coming out after that, it's not a big deal. We have always sold out in like a minute or two anyway, so it's I just love getting on here. And if I'm being completely honest, the legacy that I would love to leave behind with Rule of Three is not the event. The legacy I would like to leave behind is that everyone goes out and does these types of rides where they live, no matter where they live,
Yeah.
and I call them Rule of Three rides. You know what I mean? That's a legacy I want to leave. Like I think that this is the funnest form of riding a bike that I've ever experienced, even eh, just bar none. And I would be happy, over the moon, if everyone out there did these kind of rides where they lived. So
Yeah.
that's a legacy we really want to leave behind. So
I love it, Andy. I'm just going to shut up. If you had a microphone, I would have just allowed you to drop it and we would have cut the show right there. But I do want to just conclude by saying thank you for the energy you're putting into the sport, your energy into the community there. We'll definitely put, links to Rule of Three, because whether it's this year or next year, love for more people to go and get exposed to that great Bentonville riding and the experience you just described to us.
Thank you. I'm serious. I've listened to your podcast for a long time. How long have you been doing this now?
God, I think it's 5 years.
I was going to say, I didn't want to speak out and say like, I've been listening to you for 3 years and you've only been around for two, but because you lose track of time, but
Yeah,
I'm almost positive I've been listening to you since the beginning. So,
I love it.
very well done. I love listening to your stuff. I like the variety. Like you're always speaking to interesting people about all these different interesting topics. So keep it up. It's awesome.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that, Andy. Right on. Thanks for spending some time with us, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Gravel Ride Podcast. Huge thanks to Andy for coming on the show. I had a great time during that conversation, and I hope you all learned a bit about the riding there in Northwest Arkansas, as well as the Rule of Three gravel event. Sounds like they're already sold out for the year, but as with many of the events, it's important to put them on your list, get them in your calendar for subsequent years, and then jump on that registration to make sure you get in. Big thanks to our friends at Pillar Performance for supporting the show this week. If you're interested in supporting what we do here at the Gravel Ride Podcast, ratings and reviews are hugely appreciated. So just take a moment, go on over to your favorite podcast app and drop us a 5-star review. It really helps in discoverability. If you're interested in connecting with the other cyclists in the gravel cycling community, we do still have the Ridership. Just head on over to the ridership.com and get your free invite. It's a community-driven platform where riders can connect with other riders to share stories about gears, events, etc. And with that, I'll say my farewell. Until next time, here's to finding some dirt under your wheels.